I don't know whether he's landed yet or not. If he, no doubt, they will have to make an assessment of the circumstances about an immediate return of Cardinal Casaroli to Rome. Well, you may recall that Pope Paul VI was wounded by knife in Manila in his visit out there in the 60s. That was a very grim moment for all of us. We thought that might be the end of papal visits, but that incident was perhaps more serious than was reported at the time. I don't know how badly the Holy Father was hurt, but they did not want to set off a large kind of hysteria. And so he kept to his schedule pretty much at that time. And that's the only incident any of us have been involved in recent times. No doubt there are occasional expressions of violence inside the audience hall, I suppose, that from time to time, but those are generally picked up by these plainclothes security people.
Apart from reports that you are hearing from Vatican radio that the Holy Father is out of danger, have you had any kind of other more direct official communication that would suggest that is indeed the case?
No, I haven't had any official word. The source of all of the real information would be the Vatican radio. Now that would be authentic information. They would not be broadcasting reports, rumors there, and they said the last word from them was that the Holy Father was out of danger of loss of life.
Will this inspire any kind of study of terrorism?
Well, it certainly will add a very vital and impressive dimension, won't it? The Reagan administration has spoken many times about terrorism. Our own bishops of the United States have been gravely concerned about acts of terrorism in Central America. I think the impetus given by the incident today would certainly spur all of us on to renewed efforts to see what we can do to come to grips with this dreadful problem.
From Washington, Thomas Kelly of the National Conference of Bishops, the General Secretary of the National Conference of Bishops. We want to pick up our conversation with CBS News correspondents Bob Sheeper and Harry Reasoner in just a moment, but there are two things that we should pass along to you. That hospital officials in Rome are now quoted as saying that the Pope underwent second surgery at about 1:45 Eastern Time in the United States this afternoon, and that at that time that the hospital officials are quoted as saying they expected the Pope to be in surgery for roughly another hour. Now that was at 1:45 Eastern Time this afternoon. Again, I'm very much aware that some of you may be joining us in progress with this coverage. Our CBS News coverage has been continuous for some time now, and for those of you who've been with us straight through, forgive us if you must, but we want to try to bring people up to date that this is the second bit of surgery for the Pope. That the Pope was shot and hit by 2 bullets in Rome at about 5:25 in the afternoon Rome time, about 11:25 this morning Eastern Time. The Pope underwent surgery, one operation, in which it was said that the bullets had been removed, that so far as could be determined he had not been hit in the pancreas. There had been an early report that perhaps he had been, since at least one of the bullets went into his side. It is not clear where both of the bullets hit the Pope. The early reports were that one bullet hit him in the side and another hit him in the area of his shoulder, but later information over the last half hour, Associated Press, now indicates that the Pope may have been hit twice in the area of his intestines, that is, in the side. There are also more details now from the Rome police on the suspect. But before I tell you that, it occurs that I should say that every available piece of information that we have at the moment indicates that while the Pope's condition is serious, that it is not critical. And you heard Bishop Kelly say just a few moments ago that in direct communication with the Vatican, that the Pope's life was said by the Vatican not to be in danger. And that's something to keep in mind. The Pope is 60 years old. He would be 61 years old, I believe, on the 18th of May. But we know about this man that he has been physically active all of his life, and it was described after the end of the first operation by the Vatican as being conscious and serene. So we do want to emphasize, before we talk about the suspects in the case and what little we know about possible motives and who did this shooting, to emphasize that the best available information is that the Pope's life as of this moment, is not in danger when you judge it on a scale of a second surgery and what second surgery might or might not mean. You may want to keep that in mind. Now, as for those other details from Rome police, the suspect, the so-called main suspect, is described as being 23 years old. He gives his name as one Naaman Ali Hagsi. After Ali, it's spelled H-A-G-C-I. Naaman Ali Hagsi. He has told authorities that he is a Turkish national. Italian television now says, and this is corrective of something that was reported earlier. Earlier it was indicated that he spoke to Italian police in French, but Italian television now indicates that he does speak at least some English. And Italian television related this quote reportedly from the alleged assailant. Quote, "I don't care about life." Police now confirm in Rome that another man was also seized. He is said to be a 30-year-old student of Arab heritage now in Rome. We know nothing else about that second suspect, and the police reportedly are still looking for a third suspect, a man who was reported to have been seen in the area of the Vatican this morning with a gun at about the time the shooting took place. The weapon whose bullets hit the Pope is described as a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. 2 shots hit the Pope. At least 2 bystanders were also struck. I'm delighted and pleased to report that my old friend and colleague Winston Burdett is now in Rome and available at least a microphone for us in Rome. Winston Burdett, perhaps the world's ranking journalistic authority on the Vatican. Winston, good evening to you. It is evening now, Rome time. Do you hear me all right?
I hear you excellently. I hear you very well indeed.
Winston, what can you tell us
about the latest report on Pope John Paul's condition? He is still under operation. He has been continuously under operation for the past 2 hours, indeed a little more. And a doctor who has come from the operating room has announced that in his expectation, the operation will continue for perhaps a further hour. The first phase of the operation, that is the extraction of the bullets from the Pope's abdomen, was successful. The bullets were extracted. They had penetrated, they had pierced the intestinal tract. The difficulty was, of course, a lesion of all the cluster of arteries in the intestinal tract, and also extending to the pancreas. The operation now apparently is concentrating on the colon. The Pope was also struck in the arm, and his arm was broken. He was struck by a bullet in the arm.
Winston, is there any indication from any source, any authoritative source, as to what the motive for this shooting may have been?
His assailant, the young man, 23 years old, who identifies himself as a Turk condemned to death in Turkey for the assassination, for the terrorist assassination of a Turkish journalist. This young assailant, captured, now in the hands and under interrogation of the Italian police, was less than 2 yards from the Pope when he fired.
Winston, we are all aware that terrorism is certainly something that Italians and Rome and the Vatican have had a good deal of experience with in recent years. And one question that arises in this country almost immediately, is there any indication that this has anything to do with the so-called Red Brigades and the terrorism and the terrorists homegrown in Italy?
I think you may understand that Italians heard with relief that the assailant was not an Italian, was not a member of the Red Brigade, of the Italian Red Brigade, who has committed so many assassinations of so many high-placed persons and humbly placed persons here in Italy. The man is apparently a Turk. He declares himself to be a Turk. As the police interrogated him, he was apparently in a state of wild, of turbulent mental derangement. He identified himself first as a Palestinian Arab, then as a Chilean, finally as a Turk, and said that he had entered this country only 7 days ago. There's been great difficulty in communicating with him because the young Turk, if he be a Turk, he says that he is 23 years old, the young Turk spoke only a few words, apparently, of broken English, no Italian, and the police were seeking desperately for a proper grade A Turkish interpreter. As for his accomplice, the second man under arrest, and as for the third man, of course, whom they are still looking for, but believed to have been implicated in a band of three engaged in a concerted action, as for those other two, we have no hint as to their identification as yet, whatever. But apparently, this is a group totally extraneous to Italian terrorism.
We want to interrupt for a moment to get a statement from Vice President Bush, but before I leave you, Winston Burdett, do I understand that, according to the best available information from the Vatican, that the Pope's life is not believed in danger, despite the fact that he is undergoing second surgery, apparently to mend a broken arm?
The answer to that is a hopeful yes. And on that point, I should like to quote the single official statement that has come from the Vatican itself. A Vatican spokesman said some 20 or 25 minutes ago that although the Pope's condition is varying, there is hope. Secondly, the doctors themselves have said that they would give, that their prognosis was uncertain. They used an Italian phrase which means that their prognosis is reserved. But this, I think, means simply that after such an operation, after so serious an operation, that one must wait 48 hours before giving a definite prognosis.
Thank you very much, Winston Burdett in Rome. And Winston, if you will, stand by there, and I know that you and our Rome staff are working the telephones and every other available source of information. We want to come back to you as soon as possible. Vice President George Bush was in Washington when news of the shooting of the Pope came, and we have on videotape the Vice President's statement.
The details of this person.
What about
what his reasons are, whether it was alone or whether with others, and what's behind this kind of thing.
A minute ago you called it a worldwide
we would. Well, it is. If we condone as a society in any way international terror, or if any society does, it's wrong. I wrestled with the problem of international terror at the United Nations, and felt frustrated by that great body's inability to come to even discuss it. Now, I'm not saying this is an example of it, nor was, I don't know that, but we know in the case of the President Reagan incident that it wasn't. But to the degree terroristic actions internationally kind of condition society for this kind of thing, why, it's unacceptable.
Why?
Vice President Bush in the nation's capital, reacting to the shooting of the Pope this afternoon Rome time, at the Vatican. Now, we have two other bits of information. As reported from Rome, neither of these has been confirmed, but according to United Press International, a usually reliable wire service, 2 points that we have not reported to you before are at least not underscored. That is that reportedly, that two sections of the two portions, I don't want to use sections in the medical sense, two portions of the Pope's intestines have been removed as part of the surgery, keeping in mind that the Pope is now in the second operation. That's point one, that two sections of the Pope's intestines apparently, reportedly according to UPI, have been removed. We want to also note and underscore Winston Burdett's report from Rome a few moments ago, saying that in his conversations with people at the Vatican, and according to the Vatican's official statement, that the signs are hopeful for the Pope. The indication continues to be that his condition is serious, but not necessarily critical. However, at his age, given the fact that two operations have been performed, the second still underway, that, said Winston Burdett, and wisely so, I think, that it possibly would be 48 hours before anyone could say with any definition what the prognosis would be for the Pope. Now, I'm told that the two sections of the Pope's intestine that were removed reportedly were in the upper colon. Now, that is according to the Reuters news agency, that the two sections of the Pope's intestine removed were in the upper colon region. We do not know whether they were removed as part of the first surgery. That is a widespread assumption in Rome, or whether that comes from the second surgery. But we want to footnote that the second surgery, as the Pope went into it about, well, certainly an hour and 15 minutes ago, at least that long ago, it was said that the purpose of that second operation was primarily to repair damage to the Pope's arm, which was broken. Some eyewitnesses and others said that they thought the arm might have been broken in the fall. I want to make one other point, and then we'll pick up with Bob Schieffer and Harry Reasoner for what we know and don't know in New York, that the two women bystanders were hit by in the shooting at or about the same time the Pope was shot. One of those women has been identified as being from Buffalo, New York, and according to United Press International, the two women bystanders are reported by hospital officials now to be in critical condition. At last report, the Pope's condition was said to be serious, but not critical. But with the two women bystanders who were hit, there's an indication that possibly more than two people may have been hit, but we believe we know that at least two were hit, and the two women, one of whom is an American, are from Buffalo, New York, are now said to be critically wounded. We'll pass more along on that as details become available. In the meantime, I'll report that the assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II, news of it was quickly passed along in his native Poland. Warsaw Television interrupted its regular programming for the bulletins, as did Polish radio. Keep in mind that before he was named Pope, that John Paul II was headquartered in Krakow, that ancient city of Poland. He is of Polish heritage. The Roman Catholic Church in Poland today expressed deep shock at the news. Harry Reasoner and Bob Schieffer in New York, are we hearing anything from sources from the UN or from Washington, anything that we have not yet passed along that you believe we should have passed along in the way of information?
Dan, thank you. The first thing I think we ought to try to clear up, and we're not going to be able to do it for a while, I suppose, Harry, is this whole business of the suspect and just who he is. Now, our bureau in Rome was quoting, I believe, Italian television as identifying the man as Muhammad Ali Agha. Harry, the name spelled A-L-I-A-G-O-A. The Associated Press identifies him as Nimet Ali Haga, spelled H-A-G-C-A. The reason we're going through some of this minutia is that our files show that when the Pope went to Ankara, Turkey in 1978, a man who was identified as Ali Haga made a threat to kill the Pope. I will read just from this file copy. It says, one cause of concern, this was when the Pope was going to Turkey, was the threat to kill the Pope by a self-confessed killer of an Istanbul newspaperman who had escaped from a military prison on Sunday. In a signed letter to the daily paper Milliyet, the paper whose editor was killed in February, now this is in Turkey, and this was in 1979, the fugitive Ali Agha, a man identified as Ali Agha, called the pontiff the masked leader of the Crusades and warned that if the visit was not canceled, he would shoot the Roman Catholic leader in revenge for the recent attack on the Grand Mosque in the Islamic holy city of Mecca. Remember now, this was written in 1979 as the Pope was planning to visit Turkey, an attack that this person who wrote this letter to the Turkish newspaper alleged was of American or Israeli origin. You'll recall, of course, Harry, this attack. But we're reading strictly from the files, a man identified as Ali Haga, which has the same name as the man who's been arrested in Rome.
One of the things that you immediately comes to your mind when something like happens, as happened this morning, is that one of our colleagues came up and said, who would want to kill a pope? Well, of course, through the centuries, an awful lot of people have wanted to kill popes. They have attracted a great many ideological and religious enemies, but not particularly in recent years, except for that incident with Pope Paul. But I suppose also one of the things we've learned in the last 18 years, or should have learned in tragedies in this country, is that speculation at this stage about why the man did it or who did it can lead you very badly astray. The only thing that I think you can say in general is that it's morbidly interesting about the difference between American assassination attempts and attempts, successful or otherwise, in Europe, which is that normally in the United States, I think almost without exception, it is some individual nut, some crazed man or woman attempting to get some personal satisfaction. Normally in Europe, which regards itself as less violent than the United States, it's done for political reasons. Misguided, useless. When they started World War I that way, they came to Mexico to get Leon Trotsky that way. The other instances of assassination or attempted assassination in Europe, and the kinds of things that have been going on in Northern Ireland, are in a strange way more organized and make more sense to the crazed mind than the kind of thing that happens in the United States. And everything we're hearing so far about this suspect indicates that that pattern hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm. We should add that another person is being held, but so far, Harry, the police in Rome will not say what his involvement was, whether he aided in this in some way or someone simply suspected him of it. We were also told at the beginning that a third person was being sought. That person apparently was just someone seen running from the scene, and the witness on the scene said he was thought to have a gun. This just handed to us, Nemet Ali Haga. Italian police quote him as saying, "I couldn't care less about life." He told the police he is a student at a university north of Rome, a school for foreigners, but the university says it has no student by that name enrolled there. So the mystery and the speculation only deepens. As yet, the police have not, in Rome, Harry said, that there is any connection between this man and the man identified as Ali Haga, who wrote this letter threatening the life of the Pope when he went to Turkey in 1979. But as you say, these things have such bizarre reasons, and they don't make sense.
They don't make sense.
They're irrational.
Frequently for hours, or sometimes days, or sometimes forever.
Irrational acts. You traveled with the Pope. You were on one of his first trips, I suppose, when he came to this country.
When he came here, yes. He was, I went to Rome and flew with him to Ireland, and then from Ireland to New York, and then before he made his American tour. And of course, he's a incredible paradox. I suppose he has the same kind of personal charm for Catholics and non-Catholics that Pope John the 23rd had, and yet at the same time, in terms of American moderate Catholics, he is also too traditional for them. So you have the feeling that here is a man of incredible compassion and sympathy who charmed the leaves off the trees or the birds out of the trees if he had to, and yet took the church, depending on your viewpoint, took it somewhat backward in terms of its theology and its attitude toward things like birth control, celibacy for priests, women in the priesthood, all the kinds of things that are stirring the American Catholic Church today. But no matter what people thought of his philosophy, he was incredibly loved. He is incredibly loved, if the news is as good as it seems to be.
You know, one is almost struck by the parallel between the public affection for this Pope and the affection in this country, anyway, for President Reagan, where our polls show that people like President Reagan more than they like his programs. Such controversial issues as abortion and whether we ought or ought not to have it. More people will like President Reagan than will particularly agree with his position on that issue and several issues. And that's much the case with this Pope, is it?
I think it is, and I think it's one of the virtues of the Catholic Church, which is that they can handle a man whose philosophy may not agree with the mainstream of the Catholic Church in any given country. I mean, that church is in 112 countries, and it's a lot different in Poland than it is in the United States. And maybe what they need is a man whom they can admire and love and kneel to, and then in certain theological ways not pay much attention to.
Dan Rather?
Bob Schieffer, since Harry Reasoner did travel with the Pope, and we all know how this Pope likes to travel, believes it is very, very important to do so, that we know, particularly we know in retrospect, how important it was for President Reagan when he was shot by an attempted assassination, an attempted assassin. The fact that President Reagan was in such good physical condition, not just good physical condition for a man of his age, and in President Reagan's case, 70-plus years, but generally good physical condition. How much that helped him in the surgery he had to undergo. This Pope, Pope John Paul, we mentioned it earlier, has the reputation. He's the working man's Pope. He's a person who was hardworking in his youth, has always been physically active, more than that, an athlete still skiing. I wonder if you had a sense of that as you traveled with him, of physical strength. We've talked a great deal about his spiritual strength, but of his physical strength and how much that's likely to help him as he goes through this second bit of surgery in Rome.
I would assume, Dan, that would be a major factor. He went through, in the 3 or 4 days that I was watching him, he went through things which would have put a 20-year-old out all day, and without losing enthusiasm. I think part of what the characteristic of President Reagan and his characteristic of this Pope is that he loves the job. He loves being Pope. He loves being the spiritual leader of Catholicism. It is something that came to him, if not as a surprise, something he certainly didn't dream of at 30. I mean, I don't think young Polish priests 30 years ago dreamed of becoming Pope. But he wants to do it, and he wants to do it right. He has the kind of energy which is very often very effective in recovery from illness or from injuries, which is that he wants to live. He loves his life. He believes in what he's doing, and he's in good shape.
Dan, Winston Burnett was reporting just a minute ago from Rome that the operation on the Pope was continuing. We're now told here that part of the operation is to repair some damage on the colon, in addition to his broken arm, which apparently was not broken in the fall, as Winston reported, but was struck by one of the bullets that hit him. But I believe that this is the first indication we've had that there was some damage to the Pope's colon. And
Bob,
apparently that's what part of the surgery is now, Dan.
Exactly, Bob, that we're to bring us up to date. Right now the Pope is in surgery. He has been in surgery. This is the second operation for quite some time, but the major part of this second long operation apparently is over. And according to the best available information, 2 sections of the Pope's intestines were removed. There are hopeful signs reported by doctors at the hospital. His heart rate is said to have been steady. That vital organ we spoke of before, the vital organ, the pancreas, apparently was not hit. The pancreas apparently was not hit by either of the 2 bullets that have been removed from the Pope. Those were 9mm bullets, apparently fired. According to police, they were fired from a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. Both of the bullets have been removed. There are hopeful signs. The Pope's heart rate is reported as steady. 2 sections of his intestines have been removed. He is still in surgery, the second operation, but the major part of this second operation, and by far the longer of the 2 operations that have been performed on the Pope, is apparently nearing a close. Italy's health minister has visited the hospital within the past hour, the hospital where the Pope is being treated, and the Italian health minister told reporters that the Pope's condition is not, I repeat for emphasis, not exceptionally serious. It gives no grounds for grave anxiety. These are quotes from the Italian health minister. And after visiting Rome's hospital where the Pope is being treated and undergoing this second surgery, the important points from the health minister as he talked to reporters, the Pope's condition not considered to be exceptionally serious. It gives no grounds for grave anxiety. One again wants to put that together with Winston Burdett's words earlier, that any time a person undergoes 2 operations within the space of 6 to 7 hours, as Pope John Paul has done today, certainly caution and wisdom would dictate that whatever the hopeful signs are, that one would have to say, and there's no joy in saying it, that it may take as many as 48 hours or beyond that to know what the long-range consequences may be for the Pope. But at the moment, certainly the signs, all the signs are hopeful. Pope John Paul is really is the first of these, one hesitates to use the word, the foreigner popes. Harry Reasoner alluded to this a little earlier on. This Pope being from Poland, he was the younger of 2 cardinals in Poland. Many people may know of Cardinal Wyszynski, the elder of the 2 cardinals in Poland. At the time this Pope was named, Cardinal Wyszynski, a legendary figure throughout the Roman Catholic world and beyond, and particularly in Poland because he resisted the Nazis in World War II. Cardinal Wyszynski in Warsaw and his colleague in Krakow, the present Pope, frequently one-two'd the communist regime in Poland. That is, on one Sunday, one of them would give a hardline speech against the communist regime, and the other would give a somewhat softer talk or sermon. The following week, or perhaps 2 weeks later, that would be reversed. And it was well known, particularly in the Western world, that that's what they were doing at that time. As Harry mentioned, in his youth, perhaps Pope John Paul had very little reason to dream that he or anyone from Poland could become Pope, but become Pope he did. And he is the first so-called, and we put it in quotation marks, foreigner, that is non-Italian Pope, to be elected to the papacy in 455 years. His selection in 1978, October 16th, 1978, stunned both church officials and laymen alike. He was a Polish cardinal, and the Archbishop of Krakow, when he was named to be the Roman Catholic Church's 264th Pope, he was the first Pole in history and the first cardinal from a communist country to be chosen to sit on the throne of St. Peter. And he is now, or at least at last report, was undergoing his second operation of the day to repair damage done to him by 2 bullets from a would-be assassin's gun. One main suspect is in the custody of Rome police. Another, described as secondary suspect, is in the hands of police in Rome. And a third possible suspect, is still being sought. Bert Quint has, excuse me one moment, did we want to do that? I wanted to check and see if there was later information from the hospital. There is not. The last information I gave to you holds that the Pope is believed to be nearing the end of the second operation. We may have some details on that for you as we go along. In the meantime, my colleague Bert Quint, the CBS News correspondent stationed in Rome, but who in recent days has been reporting out of Warsaw, has this report on the beginning of Pope John Paul II's papacy.
The popular image of John Paul the man has tended to obscure that of John Paul the Pope. On the surface, he's an ebullient, casual, spontaneous person who spends a lot of time away from the Vatican, kissing babies, making jokes, and campaigning for the cause of human rights. But as leader of 750 million Catholics, he's also a staunch defender of tradition, a determined foe of those who would change and, he believes, weaken his church. From the moment he stepped out on the balcony at St. Peter's just under a year ago as the newly elected Pope, Karol Wojtyła has wowed the world. He started with the Italians, who had just lost a 4.5-century monopoly on the papacy.
Se mi sbaglio mi corrigerete.
In reasonably good Italian and in the pleasantest of tones, he said, "If I make a mistake in Italian, the language of the Vatican, you will correct me." His passionate demands for a better world, for liberation from political and economic repression for all, make him seem a fervent liberal, whereas as far as church doctrine is concerned, he is more of a moderate, even conservative. He has led a Roman Catholic rebellion against the Italian law permitting abortion, a rebellion so open and intense that many Italians accuse the Vatican of interference in temporal affairs. Early in his reign, he made it clear that there would be no retreat from the Church's traditional opposition to divorce and remarriage, and no relaxation of the insistence on priestly celibacy. When he visited Mexico last January, John Paul disappointed liberal bishops who were trying to turn a church that traditionally has sided with the rich and powerful against the poor into a political force for social justice. He urged the bishops to refrain from political activity, to limit their role to mediation. These were indications that John Paul, as his name implies, would be a consolidator rather than an innovator. The reforms of John the 23rd would be put into practice, but like Paul VI, he would fight against measures he thinks would erode the foundation of doctrine upon which the Church is built. CBS News correspondent Mike Lee spoke with Peter Hablewaite, a writer on Vatican affairs, of the impact of John Paul on the Church.
The Polish Pope has a remarkable personality. He has a great way with crowds, and he's not above using his popularity that he knows he has to cheer up the church generally. The last years of the pontificate of Pope Paul VI were rather depressed and depressing. Everybody felt that. There was a kind of mood of gloom about the place. That has now been changed, at least in the central government of the church. And to some extent this has been communicated, I think, elsewhere, particularly through the Pope's journeys to Mexico and to Poland. Many people have called him a conservative. This is largely based on the fact that he's Polish. I think here it is very important to make a distinction. Conservative in the sense that he thinks that the mainstream traditional Christian positions should be upheld. But he's certainly not conservative in the sense that he's obsessed with the past. He's much more concerned about the future. And one of the things that strikes me is that he's obsessed with the year 2000. He's always talking about the year 2000. That's where we're going, and that's more important than looking backwards.
This papacy could last a long time. Like the Pope himself, a man who started out as a stone worker and only became a priest at the age of 26, the nature of his reign can change. Its style has been set, its substance is only gradually being defined. Bert Quint, CBS News, Vatican City.
That tape report by Bert Quint, filed from Rome. Bert Quint reporting today and has been for some days from Warsaw. Right now, the Pope is still in surgery, but the major part of the long operation, at our last word, apparently was over. The major part of the long operation. Reportedly, 2 sections of the Pope's intestines had been removed. There are hopeful signs. For example, hospital officials said that his heart rate has been steady. The vital organ that was mentioned early in the early reports about the shooting, the pancreas, the Pope's pancreas apparently was not hit by either of the 2 bullets. Both of the bullets have been removed. The Italian health minister who visited the hospital not too long ago came out and told reporters that the Pope's condition is not exceptionally serious. That from the Italian health minister. And according to the Italian health minister, it gives no grounds for grave anxiety. Those are the words of Italy's health minister after visiting the hospital where the Pope, at last report, was still undergoing surgery. At St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, the veteran WCBS reporter Vic Miles is there. Vic?
Yes, Dan, right here at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Well, you very seldom see this large a crowd in front of the church unless there's a lot of noise. They're all very quiet. Some were openly weeping. And inside the church, it's hard to find an unlit taper right now. The well-wishers are pouring in. There's a communion that's going on constantly between 11:20 and 12 o'clock. There were 1,500 given communion, and that's the way it's been. New Yorkers streaming in, and when they worship and pray for the Pope, they come back out. Dan, is there anything else I can tell you?
Vic, has there been any communication from those inside St. Patrick's Cathedral for those who are practicing Roman Catholics as suggested prayers earlier in the day? I think I read somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong about this, that it was suggested the Our Father prayer and the Ave Maria.
We didn't hear anything like that here. Nothing's gone on. No personal requests of that nature have been made from the pulpit while I've been here. However, they have been saying Our Fathers repeatedly between periods of offering confirmation, not confirmation, but the services at the altar, the offering of the blood and the wine.
Thank you very much, Vic Miles, and we appreciate you standing by there. We may be coming back to you a bit later on. As we have mentioned earlier, 2 women, at least 2 women, were injured by the shooting in St. Paul Square. Italian police now say that they are off the critical list, and as a matter of fact, the latest word from Italian police is that those 2 women are not in serious condition. That includes the one American woman identified as Anne Odre, O-D-R-E, of Buffalo, New York. Now, let's pause and say once again that is frequently the case in this kind of coverage. Early on, we had the reports that 2 women and perhaps more bystanders were hit by bullets at or about the same time the Pope was struck by 2 bullets. There were early reports that at least one of those women might be in critical condition. Then came a wire service report that both were in critical condition. Our latest information is that 2 women and 2 women only confirmed as having been hit by bullets, and that both of those women, including the woman identified as Ann Odry of Buffalo, New York, are now said to be not in serious condition. The Pope's own condition is described as serious but not critical, and hopeful signs have been emphasized by hospital officials, including the hopeful sign that the Pope's heart rate has remained steady throughout this second operation, which in our last report was drawing to a close. In New York City, CBS News correspondent Charles Crawford is with a medical authority. And Charles, perhaps you and our visitor, our guest, can explain as best we know it what has been going on in surgery.
Dan, I couldn't hear your question to us if you asked one, but we have with us Dr. Stephen Lynn. Dr. Lynn is the Director of Emergency Services here in New York at St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital. And we've already talked about what we know at this point about the extent of injuries to the Pope. He apparently was hit by 3 bullets. The reports are that in the left hand, the right arm, and the lower stomach. I think that's probably the most severe one, so why don't we talk about that? Maybe you could help us to understand the nature of that wound, the nature of that injury.
The reports that we have at the present time seem to suggest that the Pope was hit either from the side or from the front, and at least one of the bullets penetrated his stomach, and that seems to be the one that has the potential to cause the greatest injury at this point in time. And we would presume that the surgery that we've been told that he has had, and indeed has been completed at this point, was due to some sort of surgery in the stomach. The most information that we have seems to point to the fact that the bullet entered somewhere in this vicinity. This organ that you can see is the stomach. This is the large intestine and the small intestine. And the report suggests that there may have been damage to some intestinal material inside of the abdomen, and that some of that may have been removed. I think the most telling fact that at least I've heard at the present time is the fact that the surgery took only 1/2 hour, and that the surgery has been completed, and as far as we can tell, the Pope is in stable or satisfactory condition at the completion of surgery. I could conclude from that there probably was not a horribly significant injury to the internal abdomen or any major structure inside the abdomen.
What kinds of complications can be present with this type of abdominal injury?
I think that the complications can be very serious. I think this is a very different type of injury from that which was sustained by President Reagan several months ago. The injury to the chest tends to be either relatively benign or very serious, and one can tell very quickly.
Well, what are the complications here? What would the specialists and surgeons be looking for now?
Whenever there's injury to the intestines inside the stomach, the intestinal contents are allowed to enter the abdomen. Those contents contain enzymes and acid material. They may contain bacteria, which can cause infection and serious problems within the abdomen.
Is that the biggest threat then facing the Pope now, is possible infection?
I think the problems are infection within the abdomen, and whenever we have surgery of this type in the upper abdomen, there is always the possibility of disease in the chest, such as pneumonia, coming as a later complication.
What is the critical period now we're facing for the Pope?
I think that he will be in a critical period for at least 24 to 48 hours until we can tell exactly what's happening, which way things will go.
What about these other wounds? Do they present, or what we know about them, any serious problems?
We have little information about the other wounds. I think there's a wound to one arm and to the opposite hand. I would presume that although we're told he is in surgery for these wounds at the present time, that they are probably relatively minor. I would imagine that he probably has a fracture to either his arm or to his hand, and that will require some sort of pinning. But in most situations, that's a relatively minor wound. I can't imagine that would be a life-threatening wound.
Again, knowing what we do, especially that critical only 1/2 hour in the operating room, if that is a correct report, what is your own prognosis from what you know in this case?
Although we can't make any definite statements, I think that is an excellent prognostic sign. I think that we would expect that the Pope, who at least as far as we know is a relatively healthy and strong individual, should be able to tolerate the surgery that he's had. And depending upon exactly what was hit and what complications will occur, we'll have to see what happens in the future. But I think things look good at this point.
What are the odds that this may affect the way the Pope functions in the future?
It's very hard to say. I think that we can expect that the Pope will be hospitalized for at least several weeks and will probably require at least several months of recuperation after that. Exactly how limited his function may be in the future would be very hard to say at this point in time.
Dr. Stephen Lynn, Director of Emergency Services, St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital here in New York, thank you so much for joining us. Dan?
Thank you very much, Charles Crawford, and thank you, Doctor. The Pope is still in surgery. This is the most reliable information we have. And let me, before we run down what we believe we know at this moment, say two things. First, that our continuing coverage from CBS News of the attempted assassination of the Pope will continue until the Pope is out of surgery and until we have some indication, some official indication of his condition, post-surgery condition. We're going to stay on the air until we have some official indication of that. Secondly, for those of you who are working and must leave the coverage, I will tell you that there will be a CBS News special report summarizing what has happened during the day tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That would be 7 p.m. Central Time. Now, as to what we think we know, the Pope is still under anesthetic. The surgery is still in progress in Rome. We know that 2 bullets have been removed from the Pope. 2 damaged sections of his lower intestines have been removed during this second operation, a long operation. When I say long, the operation is well past the 1-hour mark on the best available information that we have. There was an earlier operation just quickly after the shooting that lasted for a much shorter time. We do not know exactly how long, but we were told for a much shorter time. This is the second bit of surgery. His Holiness has been given large amounts of blood. He bled extensively from his left side after he was hit. Hospital spokesmen continue to emphasize that they are optimistic that the operation will be successful. They continue to emphasize that, as did the Italian health minister when he came out of the hospital a short while ago. There is strong hope and many prayers that the Pope will recover completely in time. It is too early to say, of course, how long a time that will take. It's too early to say whether those hopes and prayers will be answered, but every indication from the Vatican itself, from hospital authorities, and from the Italian health minister is that on the basis of the best available information, and such information is not always reliable under these circumstances, that the Pope's condition, while serious, is not considered to be critical. That was a direct quote earlier from the hospital authorities, from Vatican Radio, but of course these things are subject to change on a minute-by-minute basis. We at CBS News are trying to give you steady, reliable, but energetic and alert coverage of this situation. In order to do that, we have to continually emphasize that in live coverage, there will be information passed along. We will always try to source it whenever possible. Some of that information inevitably will prove to be incorrect. But according to the best available information, what I just gave you is the Pope's condition. He is still under anesthetic. The surgery is still in progress in Rome. A very long operation. 2 damaged sections of the Pope's lower intestines have been removed. The Pope's heart rate continues to be reported as steady. Now, the gun that the attempted assassin used in Rome today was not a Saturday night special, so-called Saturday night special type of weapon. According to the Italian police, the weapon used to put those 2 bullets into the Pope, the 2 bullets that have now been removed, was a semi-automatic pistol, 9mm. The indication is that it was a semi-automatic Browning pistol. It is a type of weapon used by police in many countries. It is small, easy to conceal. Although it's semi-automatic, it is not a so-called long gun. It is a pistol, but a semi-automatic pistol, a very powerful pistol. It is the weapon seized from a number of terrorists in recent years. It is, can be safely said that it's one of the favorite weapons of terrorists because it is a powerful weapon for use at a short range, and it can be concealed. It is similar to what those of you who may know weapons would be a .38 special, but it is shorter, squatter, somewhat fatter, which tends to make it more accurate. A 9mm semi-automatic pistol fires at a very high velocity, 800 to 900 feet per second, say. It is that kind of weapon that was used in this attempted assassination of the Pope today, and apparently, bullets from the same weapon struck at least 2 bystanders, 2 women. One of those women identified as being an American. Both of the women now said to be out of danger. There were earlier reports that some other bystanders may have been hurt. We have not heard anything additional on that. All we believe we know is that 2 women were struck and that neither of them is now in danger. Now, 2 suspects were arrested. One, a main suspect, and a second person about whom we do not know very much, been arrested, and a third person who was reported to have been seen with a gun in the vicinity of the Vatican just about the time that the Pope was shot, was also being sought by police. There is a dispute developing over the identity of the 30-year-old man who identified himself as being a Turkish national, who's now being held in this assassination attempt against John Paul II. This is a still photograph of the man identified by Italian police as being the main suspect in this shooting, Nament Ali Hagka. This is how the man identified himself. It was at first said that he did not speak English, and later it said he spoke English, and he was quoted by Italian police as saying that he had no regard for life. Now, he identified himself, this main suspect in the case, he identified himself as a student at the University for Foreigners, just north of Rome. However, that university says that it has no student with his name enrolled there. Further, a Turkish news agency says the alleged assailant could be, underscore that word, could be an escapee from an Istanbul prison, a 24-year-old man who was sentenced to death in 1979 for the murder of a Turkish newspaper editor. This person, according to the Turkish news agency, escaped later that year and reportedly had threatened the Pope's life. Now, all of that from a Turkish news agency, one must put that under, for the moment at least, under the heading, general heading of speculation. That even the Turkish news agency said that this alleged assailant, the man arrested, could be that person who was in prison and escaped in Istanbul some time ago. One of the reasons that the Turkish news agency speculates about that, and it is speculation, is that that person, that young Turkish man who escaped from the Istanbul prison, had threatened to kill the Pope. We want to say as a footnote that the hospital where the Pope is undergoing surgery, his second operation of the day, is described as the most modern and fully equipped in Rome. It's just 3 miles from the Vatican. One of the fortunate things, and not many things fortunate occurred on this day at the Vatican, but one of the fortunate things was that the hospital is located so close to the Vatican, and the Pope was rushed there in an ambulance which was standing by near the spot where the bullet struck the Pope. Now, perhaps those of you who have been with us for a while remember that videotape. We may be able to get it up and show it to you again shortly. That videotape in which the Pope was seen in his open-air vehicle, a Jeep-like vehicle, in which he was making his somewhat regular Wednesday rounds. And this is the scene. And the Pope was being greeted by well-wishers, including tourists. This scene is just about in front of the Vatican post office, for those of you who know the Vatican. Those tremendously impressive colonnades behind the Pope. I'm sorry we have this tape breakup at that spot. Pope greeted a little girl. And how fortunate it was that little girl was not in the Pope's arms when the shots were fired. And just after these scenes, the shots rang out. This is in slow motion. Pope touches another child's head. Then, the next thing anyone knew, the Pope's vehicle was racing and his security guards were trying to clear the way. You can see the Pope is down in the Jeep-like vehicle, one of his security people leaning over him. Now, just after this, the Pope was put into an ambulance. The crowds, many people in the crowd not knowing what had happened. The Swiss guards, who are traditionally the historic guards for the papacy, helped to clear the area. Some people who had been knocked down, others fell to the pavement when they first heard shots. And we have an audio recording. I want to make one point before we go to it, however, that the Pope, just after that scene where you saw the Jeep-like vehicle disappear, the Pope was put into an ambulance. Fortunately, an ambulance was standing by in this area because frequently the emotion of seeing a Pope and the hot weather, tourists standing for a long time in this area, people faint. And so regularly they have ambulances standing by, and fortunately they were able to get the Pope into one of those ambulances. The standard procedure for the ambulance to be there to carry away tourists or others who may faint or have other difficulties. The Pope was put in one of those ambulances, rushed to the hospital, and the fact that he was in a hospital within minutes after the shooting may prove to be what saved the Pope's life. Now, on an audio recording from Rome, we now have an eyewitness to the shooting, a man who's identified as Nicholas Raluk. Nicholas Raluk, his nationality unknown, at least unknown to me. This is how he described the shooting. This is an audio-only eyewitness report.
There was people of many, many different nationalities all around me. We couldn't understand each other, but we understood one word, that the Pope was hurt. Around the immediate area, there was a complete pandemonium as people were screaming and grabbing. It seemed to go 10, 20 people deep all around the area. The Swiss guards, which were behind me, immediately ran, hands on swords, as they ran down past me and leaped over the fence about 10, 15 feet away from me to jump over to go into the crowd. As soon as the Pope realized that the Pope had been shot, people then broke out into crying and they were dropping to their knees praying.
That was an audio-only recording. We put the audio eyewitness report of the shooting, eyewitness description of the shooting, over some of the videotape which was taken just after the shooting, and that's what you just saw and heard. To update you as best we can, this is the most reliable information available to CBS News at the moment. The Pope is still in surgery. He was last reported still under anesthetic in his second operation of the day, and by far the longest of the two operations. He was shot twice. He was shot twice in the intestines. His shoulder was not hit, as had first been indicated by early reports. No vital organ, so far as we can determine, was directly hit by a bullet. Vatican Radio has just said, and I quote, that the Pope is, quote, not in serious condition. Let me repeat that. Vatican Radio has just said, as they have said earlier, but it may take on added meaning now because this second operation has gone on for more than an hour. Vatican Radio says that Pope John Paul II is, quote, not in serious condition. 2 sections of the Pope's intestines were removed during surgery. The operation is reportedly now nearing an end, and the Pope may, according to information just received this second, the Pope may already be in the post-operative recovery room. Now, Winston Burdett and others from our CBS News staff in Rome are trying to check that out. We, as I said earlier, will remain on the air until we have some official indication of the Pope's condition after this surgery. The indication just within the last few moments is that the Pope may finally be out of this second operation. Now, I'm also handed information that says that the additional surgery may be underway or contemplated. Please underscore that word may. Additional surgery may be underway or contemplated. Reports from CBS News in Rome and the wire services conflict on this point. But it is known that both bullets, 2 bullets and 2 bullets only, so far as can be determined, struck the Pope. Both of those bullets have been removed from the body of His Holiness, and that 2 sections of his intestines were removed during surgery. Both of the bullets struck the Pope in the general area of his intestines. Apparently, despite the early reports and contrary to early reports, he was not struck in the shoulder or upper arm. There was a report that the Pope had a broken arm. If that is true, apparently the arm was broken as the Pope fell to the floorboard of that Jeep-like vehicle in which he was standing as he was shot. There is one main suspect in the hands of Italian police, a young man who identifies himself as a Turkish national. A secondary, what is described as a secondary suspect, was arrested at the time. We have practically no information about him, and at last report, the Italian police were still searching for a third possible assailant. 2 women bystanders, including one American woman, were injured at or about the same time the shots were fired at the Pope. Neither of those women is now described as being in serious condition. That is to say, both are in not serious condition. This is videotape of one of the bystanders being carried away. That obviously in the stretcher was one who was hit by a bullet. I am not sure that the second woman you saw had actually been struck by a bullet. They were being rushed to a hospital. As we pointed out before, fortunately, ambulances, as a matter of course, are standing by in this area outside the Vatican, actually in the Vatican itself, to take care of what, under other circumstances, would be described as routine emergencies. I am seeing this videotape, as you are, for the first time here. Italian police marking a spot where one of the bystanders was apparently a spot where one of the bystanders was struck, and I believe those are bullets on the ground. The Pope was struck by, it is believed, by bullets from a 9mm semi-automatic weapon, which is described by Italian police as having been a Browning semi-automatic weapon, a 9mm semi-automatic, similar to a .38 pistol, similar. That's the basic law enforcement pistol carried in this country. .38 is. However, the bullets that struck the Pope were 9mm. That videotape replay there, just in from Rome, where Winston Burdett, our veteran correspondent who has covered the Vatican for more than a quarter of a century, is heading up our CBS News coverage. I will say, as we've said before, that Winston Burdett, who is not only experienced in reporting the Vatican, but fortunately for us, is a very experienced journalist at covering medicine and medical affairs, has been cautioning right along that while all signs point to a hope for the Pope, every official announcement from the Vatican and from the hospital has seemingly gone out of its way to emphasize that while the Pope's condition is serious, that it's not critical, and that his life is not considered to be in grave danger, that Winston Burdett cautions that under such circumstances it certainly would be 48 hours and perhaps longer before anyone could say with certainty how long it's going to take the Pope to recover. We want to remind you again that there will be a special CBS News report, a special report tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 Central Time. In the meantime, our CBS News White House correspondent Bill Plant is at the White House with the statements from President Reagan. Bill?
Yeah, and just a short while ago, the White House put out a statement from the President, a message from the President to the Pope, and it reads as follows. Your Holiness, I have just received the shocking news of the attack on you. All Americans join me in hopes and prayers for your speedy recovery from the injuries you have suffered in the attack. Our prayers are with you, and it's signed Ronald Reagan. No mention by the President of what happened to him 6 weeks ago. The Vice President did mention it in a brief interview out behind the White House on the South Lawn not too long ago. Some of you who are watching have already seen that, I know. But the President is spending the afternoon in the residence, still in his own recuperation, and he's keeping up by telephone and television.